our minds say, if I do that, that's what's going to happen to me. And
Mhm.
that is never true.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics podcast, the realest fitness podcast, health and wellness podcast in the world. Dylan, we both liked the hands-free, or excuse me, the handheld microphone setup so much that we're both going back to it for this week's episode.
Yeah, dude, I'm in bed.
I see
I'm like
that.
I'm like
I
basically laying down today.
I just forgot my mic stand, so
Oh,
we're just gonna roll with it. But we're here because we have some of the biggest news I think that we've ever broke
massive.
on this podcast. This is huge. We cured hiccups, Dylan. We did it.
Yeah, believe it or
It's
not, man.
amazing.
Yeah, and I guess we've cured them. They've been cured for quite a while. This article dates back to 2023. So I missed it, but I'm really happy I know about it now, and I'm excited to share.
Yeah. So why don't you why don't you tell the people a little bit more about what the deal is with hiccups and how they can get rid of them.
Yeah, so after last week's hot topic discussion, I think you noted we had to sign up for a free trial of the Atlantic. And so I figured I'd make use of that free trial and scroll around a bit on some of their health and wellness content and found this article that says the cure for hiccups exists and it's free. So it's an article that is suggesting that there's actually a way to cure the hiccups, and it's not necessarily the woo-woo gargling of salt water or saying the word pineapple, but rather something that actually leverages our body's physiology to make the hiccups go away. So we don't really know why we hiccup, but we have a rough sense of how they happen. It has to do with a quick spasm in the diaphragm, and that causes this sudden inhalation of air and then a sudden closing of the glottis, which is the space between your vocal cords. And that's what causes this sound. And then this loop occurs between the diaphragm, the phrenic nerve, which controls the diaphragm, and the vagus nerve, which is a long wandering nerve that connects the brain to the chest, diaphragm, and other parts of the body. So then the diaphragm just spasms on repeat and repeat and repeat. The article talks about this guy, I think from the University of San Antonio, Texas, who actually created a device. This was lost on me. I never knew about this.
The Hickaway.
Um, what's that?
It's called the Hickaway.
The Hickaway. Yeah. And it was actually on Shark Tank and got an investment from Mark Cuban and has since been fairly successful.
Yeah, he's
So
got to be pissed about this article.
I guess it works. But now this article is going on to talk about another researcher who's figured out how to help us do this for free.
Yeah, well, the Hickaway is basically just a straw. It's like a straw where one end, the end that you breathe through, is more open than the end that the air goes through, and something about that like exasperated breath or that difficulty, that strenuous breathing is said to make it go away. But save your $15 because Dylan's going to tell you how to do it for free.
This is so simple. Like
Hmm.
this is I haven't not had the opportunity to try it yet. But the claim is that this works if done correctly 100% of the time. So get out your notepad and write this down. So here's what you're going to do. The next time you have the hiccups, first you're going to exhale completely. So let all of the air out. And then you're going to inhale a very deep breath. You're going to hold that breath for 10 seconds. And then without exhaling, inhale a little bit more. Wait 5 more seconds. Then top up the breath again. And then release. Hiccups gone.
You just have to do that one time?
That's what it says, man.
Yeah. Um, I'm not really a hiccup guy. I don't know about you.
Every once in a while they get me and they suck, but not more than once or twice a year.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was thinking back to uh why I don't think that I really hiccup, and what I think it's because when I was in middle school, we had a teacher that if you started hiccuping during her class, she would walk up to your desk. She'd stop class. She'd walk up to your desk, pound on it, and say, "All right, if you want to interrupt my class, hiccup for me. Hiccup, please, please,"
What?
and just sit there and demand that you hiccup on cue. And I think that was 100% success rate. There was never a kid that hiccuped twice.
Like, hiccuping was something that you were choosing to do?
She was just being funny. Um, but man, it worked. And so I think after that, I think my body didn't want to go through that torment. So I think it just ceased hiccuping. And yeah, now if I do, it's just one. I'm a one and done guy. Um, so yeah, this isn't really for me, but I'm sure there are people in our audience that suffer. So I'm glad we got to share this.
Yeah, dude, this is pretty wild.
It's pretty wild,
I'm just
man.
looking through the article some more. That hiccup tool, what's it called? The Hickaway?
Pick away
Yeah, it costs you $13.42. They had $1 million in revenue. So
from a straw.
you and I might not be struggling with the hiccups, but somebody is.
Bunch of people are. Yeah. No, I mean, this is something that I mean, and we're sharing this knowledge with everybody. So and this is before Big Pharma could get their hands on it. This is really wild stuff. So we
This
are
technique, this free technique has a name. It's
okay.
the supra maximal inspiration,
Yeah,
SSMI.
SSMI.
So give it a try.
But
Report back. Let
basically,
us know.
this
Does it
is
work?
just Huberman talks about this breathing technique for focus.
Hmm.
He recommends that people do this like very similar breathing technique if you're feeling stressed and you're just trying to like center yourself. So I don't know. Like, yeah, this is great. I'm glad we were able to share this massive finding with the
Huge,
people.
huge finding.
Yeah.
So what else we're going to talk about today?
Okay, let's transition to the main conversation. Today, we wanted to talk about the pros and cons of popular training trends. So, uh, we know that there are lots of different, popular fitness trends out there. And, you know, eh, for the most part, there are people that obsess over them, and then there are the people that just shit on it relentlessly. And as with everything, there's a little bit more nuance than just black and white here. So we're going to go over some of the most popular fitness Google searches over the last year, and then also things that you guys asked us about. And then we're just going to give our opinions on them, some facts, some feelings, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I was thinking about the like characteristics of training that make it trendy. And typically they're characteristics that don't lend themselves to sustainable success over the long term. So they usually either look really crazy and cool so you can post them on social media. They promise, and even in some cases, lead to really quick results or some sort of short term feedback loop because people are so um, motivated by and require such immediate feedback with everything. They're often the sort of things that feed that need. Um, and so there's pros and cons to all these, and I think we're going to talk through some of those. Ultimately, man, like we've talked about time and time again, when it comes to any sort of training, you want to pick something that you can do consistently for a very long time. Consistency is far more important than even the effectiveness of a single workout session or even really a 30-day period of time, right? Because a lot of these trends will brand themselves as you're going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Well, that's great. But 30 days is, 1 month out of 12 in a year and is 1 month out of, an 80-year life that you're going to live. So, I would encourage people to try not to be motivated by those shorter term promises and always keep in mind the journey and the importance of sustainability with any given training program.
Yeah, you need to find something that you're going to be able to repeat day after day. The most effective workouts tend to be some of the more boring ones. And so getting comfortable with that monotony is, one of the most important keys to establishing a successful workout routine. But that's not to say that there isn't, good that can come from these, more popular, like training trends. So let's get into it. Where do you want to start?
So let's start with calisthenics. People have been Googling that quite a bit. So what we're really talking about there is body weight training, right? And we've talked about body weight training before. There are a ton of positives to doing this. Probably most importantly, the opportunity for improved body awareness or proprioception, right? How does your body move in space? What's the relationship between different components of your body and how they achieve different movement patterns? So, you're not going to achieve that as much with weights, where there's this external stimulus. When it's just your body, you have that opportunity to better know where your body is in space and how it's moving. So from a body awareness point of view, huge pro. I think the other really big pro is just the convenience, right? Like you don't even need a gym. You can pretty much do calisthenics anywhere for the most part. There's probably certain movements that you might require like a pull-up bar or some minor external stimulus, but for the most part we're talking about body weight training here. So in my
Yeah.
opinion, it's really those two things that are sort of top of the list on the pro side of things.
And the other pro for a lot of people is it looks really cool. If
Yeah,
you
that's
see
awesome.
somebody if you see somebody doing muscle ups or these, crazy holds, they look like gymnasts. And, a lot of these calisthenic movements are gymnastic based and they do look really cool. But that does come with its own, set of issues, I guess. Namely, it's becomes really difficult to progressively overload, as we've talked about it a number of times. The most effective way to build muscle and to get stronger is to progress over time by, either adding weight or by, controlling tempo, adding reps, adding sets, those types of things. And with body weight training, that becomes really, really difficult. And so, I mean, I guess like as far as one of the initial barriers is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, and that's important, right? So keep in mind to build muscle effectively, the studies show us that the rep ranges need to be somewhere in like the 5 to 30 range, 30 at the max. So if you're doing air squat or body weight squats and you've gotten to the point where you can do 50 of them per set, that's no longer really a muscle building exercise. That's now more about muscle endurance and really cardiovascular health at that point. So, body weight training, calisthenics can be really effective for beginners because you may be more in that 5 to 30 rep range with a given exercise. It can also be good for more advanced um, lifters if they get good at it and can figure out how to manipulate the tension. So there are some ways to do that, right? You can manipulate angles, you can manipulate time under tension where you really slow the exercise down. But to do that, you've really got to get good at that body awareness. You've got to get really good at connecting to the muscle itself. And so, yeah, I think the challenge here is as you progress, and if you want to continue to build muscle, you're going to need to look to some external stimuli to do that well.
There we go. The other thing that I think about with calisthenics or body weight training is the high risk of injury. And this is counterintuitive to a lot of people because they naturally think that by not using weight, it's going to be safer than if you are using certain weights to load movements. And what I see with athletes that do a lot of calisthenic work and just like that form of training in general is it is really challenging on the joints. And a lot of times with these calisthenic movements, you are manipulating momentum and force, and you have to be really, really mindful of how you're doing these moves. Whereas with a loaded movement, that weight is going to give you feedback a heck of a lot sooner than your body weight is. So you're going to know if something is off in your form a lot sooner with a loaded exercise versus just doing it with body weight. And so, I know that it is something that a lot of people it's appealing to a lot of people because they are intimidated by weights and they think that they're going to, hurt themselves. But if you lift with control and you're really mindful about form, I do think that you're better off in the long run by using some weights. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do body weight training, but I think that is a common misnomer that people need to realize is you see a lot of different, mainly like different joint injuries with moves like these.
Yeah, and what you're gonna find on social media is some guy or girl who claims that they achieved this insane physique doing exclusively calisthenic workouts. And in those cases, I can promise you there's one of two things occurring. Either one, they are marketing and selling calisthenics, but they used weights to achieve the physique they had, or they're a genetic freak and just respond insanely well to body weight training. So for most people, again, if this is something you love to do and you're going to do it consistently over and over and over again, you can build muscle and you can be very, very healthy doing this form of training. But at some point it's likely you'll plateau. At some point it's likely that you will require some external stimulus to continue progressing. And so I think for a phase, for a season, something like this can be fantastic, tons of benefit to it. But over the long term, I think it's important to consider other modalities of training if you want to continue to progress.
Absolutely. All right. The next one that we have are workout snacks. So basically, what this means is you take your full workout and you just break it into more digestible chunks. So, say you have a workout that's going to take an hour, you break it up into 10 to 20 minute sessions throughout the day. And this is really popular because it just seems to be a lot more approachable to people doing these smaller chunks of workouts as opposed to dedicating time for the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's equally effective. Like it's not going to be any less effective. I've actually been trying this out some on days where my work schedule is a bit busier and I don't have 60 minutes to give to the gym. I'm fortunate to have a home gym here, and if a meeting ends 10 minutes early or I get through a task a little bit quicker than I thought, I'll just run downstairs, hit a couple sets, get back to my work. And there's a lot of benefit to that. Like it kind of breaks up the monotony of the day. It keeps your body moving. Really good if you have home equipment, obviously, because to go to the gym 6 times for 10 minutes, that's not going to work so well. It could certainly be kind of blended with the calisthenics opportunity where you could just, do these more body weight movements, 10 minutes here and there throughout the course of the day, and you'll get good success out of that. I think the con here is if this is your plan, it can be really easy to do that first 10-minute session and then the day gets away from you and you don't get any more of those snacks in. So if you got to know what kind of person you are, right? Like if you think you can be consistent with that, great. But sometimes I feel like I might struggle with that. I'd rather give my 60 minutes to the workout itself, know that I'm giving that intentional time to it, and then build the rest of my day around that. But I think that just depends some on the person that's doing it.
Yeah, I actually think that this requires more discipline
Hmm.
than going to the gym for an hour. Because like you said, you really have to make sure that you're finding those pockets. And if this is what you are able to do, or if this setup works for you, this is great because as you mentioned earlier, Dylan, like it's equally effective. There, as far as we can tell, if you are doing the same exercises with the same amount of load, it doesn't matter if you're doing it all at once or if you're doing it, throughout the day. And one pro to this is, if you are giving yourself more time between these movements, you actually might be able to lift a little bit heavier or do a
Hmm.
couple extra reps because you're going to be better rested. So you could actually, see more muscle gain or strength benefits by doing something like this. But I find it really, really challenging. So this is something for me where, I know if I'm having a busy day, if I just have a day where finding a full hour is going to be tough, I will intentionally set up my workout for something like this. Uh, Personally, this is something that I know I couldn't stick to long term, but I think especially for people that are trying to establish a healthy routine, this is a great way to at least just start to get into the swing of things because if you're doing 0 minutes of exercise a day, 10 minutes is going to be better than that 0. So starting with something small, building up to something a bit more complete. But I think as far as a long-term solution goes, I just know personally this is not sustainable for me.
Yeah, I think you could reduce it to like 2 sessions a day, right? And that could work a little bit better. Like,
Like
maybe you
two
don't
30
have
minute sessions
yeah,
or
like, maybe you
however.
don't have an hour, but
Yeah.
you can fit in 30 minutes in the morning and you can fit in 30 minutes after work, whereas, like, an hour in the morning or an hour after work would be tougher. And you
Yeah.
could take an off-the-shelf program, basic home, basic muscle, and just divide the day in half, do part of it in the morning, part of it later on. That could be a really effective way to make this work. But I'm
Yeah, I
with
like
you,
that.
like, 6 10-minute sessions, not gonna work so good for me.
No, it's gonna be really tough.
Next one we have here is rucking, made
Is there
popular by military training. So
Yeah, people are into it.
people are searching this. It's just basically walking or hiking with a weighted backpack or
Right.
some weight on the front of your body, I think. I got some good practice with this after having a child because he'd take really good naps if I put him in the baby carrier and went for a walk.
Mhm.
Um, it's basically just making walking harder, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's
um,
resistance training walking.
right. So, it's not really gonna build significant muscle. Um, it might burn a few more calories, but for the most part, it's really all it is making walking harder.
Yeah, and if walking is your main form of cardio and it's something that you do regularly, then for sure, strap on a backpack. You don't even need weights to do it. Just get a backpack and put a bunch of books in there and just make sure the big thing with that, and I always have to say this, is make sure that those straps are nice and tight. You want it sitting high on your back. You don't want to be like the cool kid in high school that has the straps all the way down so that the backpack is hanging down by your ass because that's going to put a lot more tension on your low back. But no, I mean, I like rucking. I remember when my son was younger, I loved putting him in the carrier and going on hikes. It was good for him. It was a nice little extra exercise for me. So no, I mean, if this is the form of cardio that you're into, by all means, it's awesome.
Yeah, so basically it just makes walking harder. You might burn a few more calories if you throw a little weight on. Go for a backpacking trip, do some camping, get out in nature. Like, that's basically the same thing, right?
Oh yeah, that's just extreme rucking with
Extreme
a
rucking.
with a nice little treat at the end.
You bet. The next one we have here, we've mentioned before. I've got a major gripe with it. It's 75 hard. And I was a little discouraged to see how much people have been Googling this. So let's just cover quickly what 75 hard is for people who don't know. Basically, for 75 days in a row, you're going to follow a diet, and it's not super prescriptive on that, but it's supposed to be healthy, focused, and no alcohol. You're going to do 2 45-minute workouts per day, one of which has to be outside. You're going to drink 1 gallon of water. You're going to read 10 pages of a book, and you're going to take a daily progress picture. If you miss a day, you failed and you start the 75 days back over.
Yeah.
So, wholly difficult, wholly restrictive, wholly unsustainable. Like, there are just so many problems with this. Wholly dangerous. Like, 2 45-minute workouts every day for 75 straight days is a recipe for disaster. Like,
Yeah.
that's not even beneficial.
Right. I mean, because yeah, it's not like you're supposed to do that for 5 or 6 days a week and then you have a rest day. There's no rest days built into
Right.
this. If you take a rest day, you failed.
Yeah. This is almost all bad. Like, there's a few pros. Reading 10 pages of a book a day, cool, good idea.
Mhm.
Um, Trying to get some more water is good, but a gallon can be too much for some people. Like,
Yeah,
that's a lot
exactly.
of water,
That's the thing is this isn't like they just give these guidelines as if it's prescriptive for everybody, but
right?
there's like a gallon of water for some people is straight up dangerous.
Yeah, and, like, following a healthy diet and not drinking alcohol for a period of time is certainly a good idea, but
But
as we've communicated before, and a hill we will continue to die on, is that a healthy diet should include some flexibility,
right.
for it to be sustainable over the long term. And if the diet you choose to do this is too restrictive, and you're a person who enjoys alcohol on occasion and you cut it out for 75 days, I know what happens at the end of the 75-day period of time, right? Like, you're gonna go out, get
Binge.
hammered, and eat a bunch of shit.
Yeah, you go on a bender. I mean, look, and that's the big thing for this is you're taking a bunch of people that are looking for a kick in the ass, and you're giving it to them, all right. So, what do you think's going to happen on that 76th day? You are not actually establishing any healthy habits. What you're doing is you're establishing that you can get fit and get your mind right in 75 days and then you can fuck off until you feel like you need to do this again and you're going to be fine, but that is just binging. That's all
Mhm.
this is. And
Preach.
also diets don't work. Like
Right?
what you eat it should it's not a diet. If you are on a diet, that implies that it's going to end. So, what we should be more interested here is introducing things that we can actually stick to for the rest of our lives, or at least for 80% of the rest of our lives. And, this just is so opposite of the message that we're trying to send. And yeah, it's just this is something that I mean, we're just going to continue to rag on until it is no longer in the popular training trends on Google because yeah, it just sucks ass.
That's a nice little tease for the next episode we're going to do, which is the pros and cons of popular diets. So
Hmm.
stay tuned for that. Maybe we should come up with something called, like, 365 sustainable. Like,
Yeah, we'll come up. I mean, yeah, we'll come up with the buzzwords yeah, uh 365 medium.
medium.
Mediums medium soft.
This is designed for your former college athlete. It's designed for those that are seeking the punishment, and
Yes.
it's typically pursued by people that don't have a very good relationship with fitness. Now, if you've been consistent in training for 10 years and you're getting a little bored and you wanna try something really hard,
Yes.
but you've got those sustainable, healthy habits in place that you can return to, might be fun to give it a shot, but I would listen to your body. Like, even if you're a trained individual, 90 minutes of exercise every single day for 75 days is too much exercise.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
that
just
isn't good for
ridiculous.
you. So that's just crazy.
There's no, uh reliable health and wellness mind out there that will tell you that that's good for you.
No.
And so maybe like who knows, maybe the object of the challenge is for everybody to fail. Maybe that's the point. And
Teaching.
if that's
Yeah.
the case, like even so, I just, I just don't think that that forcing people to do something that they can't stick to is going to be beneficial, net positive in the long run. It just feels like you're going to make people who already have a bad relationship with fitness and probably with how they feel about themselves because of that, and you're just going to, beat beat them into a pulp until they either make it out of the 75 days and then celebrate hard as hell and start their backslide, or uh wise up and realize that this is just stupid.
I don't hate the daily progress picture. Like if you're getting into fitness and you're trying to lose some weight or look a little different, throw the scale away and take a picture once a week for a year. I feel like that's a much better gauge of progress because scale may or may not move, but you may see a little more tone in your arms. You may, notice that some of the weight has fallen off your waistline. Um, so it depends on the person, right, and the relationship with their body and all those sorts of things. But that can be an interesting way to kind of measure progress versus constantly relying on something like the scale.
Yeah, even that though, I still think daily's too much.
Agreed. Yeah.
I still think, even weekly on that might be a little bit much, but something, yeah, you're right. I mean, you should like, yeah, it's one of those things where I completely agree. Maybe, twice a month or once a month, you're taking those progress photos, and if you're being consistent, you'll definitely see that change a lot faster than you'll see the number on the scale. So I'm with you. I don't hate that.
The next one here was searched a ton, and it's interesting to me. So it's functional fitness.
Hmm.
It's a term that's been around for quite a while, I think, but is gaining some momentum again. And the way they've defined it is engaging in similar movements normally required for everyday life. So the exercises in functional fitness are seeking to strengthen your muscles, improve flexibility, and reduce injury. So I guess my question is, how is this any different than just strength and or resistance training?
I think it is strength and resistance training, but I think you know what it is, Dylan. It is it's using more kettlebells,
Mm,
or like a bag of sand or something. It is less convenient fitness tools, and it's doing movements that are a little extra. So it's a clean and press, it's always something a little bit more than what your classic gym movements are.
yeah.
And so yeah, like I'm all for functional fitness. I think that that all fitness is functional. um but yeah, I think that this term is just marketing for people with slightly obscure training techniques that they want to figure out some sort of umbrella to put it under so that they can seem unique. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, with strength training, I think there's probably like 4 or 5 different adaptations you can be in pursuit of, right? You can be after strength, you can be after hypertrophy or building muscle, you can be after performance, athleticism to some degree, and then you can be after, like, functionality, like body, but I think a lot of that functionality is gonna come with your pursuit of strength, hypertrophy, and performance. And good strength training programming over the course of many months to a year is going to hit on all of these things. So, like, in my opinion, functional fitness is really just the seasons in training that we've talked about. It's pursuing these different adaptations, cycling through them, not getting stuck in one. so that you are not only building muscle, but you're building muscle functionally. You're improving your flexibility and mobility. You're reducing your injury risk. And that certainly may, especially with a lot of performance based training, include cool implements like a kettlebell, or I've had a lot of fun with a steel mace,
Hmm.
or those sorts of things. So I get why it exists as a term, right? It's another thing to market and sell, but good strength training, good fitness should just be inherently functional.
Right. Yeah. I think that functional fitness is a term that the creators of the Bosu ball are pumping out there so that people use that that tool, um, because they're like, "Oh, yeah, you have to balance. You know what will help your balance? A Bosu ball."
Right.
Which, like, I in certain situations, but I mean, if you go to the gym, and your trainer is having you spend 30 minutes doing exercises on a Bosu ball in the name of functionality, you need to find a new trainer because
Yeah.
they're just overcomplicating things. Yeah, a comprehensive fitness routine should be functional. Um, I have nothing else to say about that.
I guess the 5th pillar would be like longevity, right?
Hmm.
So, we should do an episode on that because there's different ways to train for these different adaptations, and they're all important. Whether it's strength, hypertrophy, performance, functionality, or longevity. And there's sort of some crossover between them as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, there's certainly a lot of pros to training functionally. Whether it requires its own Google search as like its own, I don't know. I'm a bit stuck on that. Like you said, I think good, well-rounded strength training over the long term will achieve functional fitness.
I think the people that are Googling that are the same people that meet with their trainer and are like, I want to start lifting weights, but I don't want to get too bulky. Um,
Right?
as if that's something that's just going to happen. And that is fine. And that's a conversation that, any good trainer should be able to have with their client, why you don't need to worry about getting bulky, male or female. I've had both tell me that.
Mhm,
But yeah, I think that if you are, yeah, if you're training well, you're training functionally, um, and yeah, that can look like a lot of different things, but it also means the boring, simple stuff too. It's
mhm.
not all of this just functional doesn't mean novel.
That's part of the problem with, like, the portrayal of fitness and fitness culture and social media is, like, you see this guy who's promoting a certain modality of exercise, and he's yoked out of his mind, but, like, and then our minds say, "If I do that, that's what's gonna happen to me."
Hmm.
And that is never true. Like, there are so many individual variables, external variables we aren't able to understand that contribute to that guy looking that way. Not to mention the element of time. Like, he's probably been doing it for 20 years.
Hmm.
Um, so be cautious of that, right? Like, it's hard to get bulky. It's really, really, really hard. It's hard for people that are, traditionally kind of ectomorphs. Um, but it's even hard for people that have more of an endomorph build where, like, it's just hard to pack on muscle. Like, you have to work hard to do it. And we've talked about
Yeah, it's
once you've earned it,
intentional.
it sticks, but you're not gonna do a 90-day, 12-week workout program and blow up to a point where, you're uncomfortable with how bulky you are. And guess what? If you do, you're a genetic anomaly and you can take a month off and return to where you were before. So, or a couple months off, whatever it takes. But yeah, that's an interesting point and is not something that should ever get in the way of you pursuing any sort of training.
Yeah, exactly. All right, the last one that we have is the classic. We touched on this last week. The 30 days to X. So whether it is 30 days to the perfect push up, or 30 days to six pack, or sculpted shoulders. You see it all the time, and it is actually something um that I've started to research more about, how fitness coaches generate business. And this is one of the things that a lot of people recommend doing because of how many people are into it, because they see that 30-day horizon, and they're like, oh, I can do something for 30 days. But just because you can do something for 30 days doesn't mean that you should, and it also doesn't mean that it's going to become a long-term habit. It takes a heck of a lot longer than 30 days to establish a habit. And so, like I said last week, I don't know of anybody that's actually started one of these 30-day trends and has actually finished them. And I think that just is a perfect encapsulation of why these aren't really effective, an effective form of exercise.
Yeah, there's some pros to it. I think we mentioned last time, and I thought about it some more. I think if it's like a 30-day strength training program, which is typically shorter than you'd probably find and or want, and maybe it does have some focus on building your butt. Like that's super popular, right? Like 30 days to the bigger booty. Um, there's some opportunities in that, right? We talked about the community aspect, which I think is good. The challenge will always be what do you do after those 30 days, even if you are able to stick to it, even if it's programmed well, right? Like it could be 30 days to a bigger booty, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like super restrictive and requires something every day. It could just be a 30-day workout program targeting your glutes. I think they can be really good if you have a trainer, like somebody that's there to help you facilitate that experience and prepare you for what comes next. Because my fear with these always remains, even if you're successful at it, is it sustainable? Like that is always the question I'm asking myself when I'm thinking about how I train or how I help somebody train and their relationship with food and fitness is it going to be too difficult that I'm never going to want to do it again? Is it going to be difficult enough that it's going to encourage me to see some progress and propel me forward? So there's pros and cons to it. I would stay far away from anything that comes with some sort of programmatic promise, right? Like anything that says 30 pounds in 30 days or 10 pounds of lean mass in 2 months. That's fucking bullshit. Like that is just marketing nonsense. And I would write those off into I can't think of a pro in those. I would stay so far away from those.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that people are always looking for the kickstart. And that's why these 30-day programs have a lot of success. But if you ask a coach, are they doing these programs because they find them successful, or are they doing these programs because it gives them new leads? It's going to be the latter. They
Mhm.
do these because it helps them get more people that they can potentially sell on workout programs and on one-on-one training. They don't, any trainer worth their salt understands, and will tell you that these 30-day resets or whatever are just marketing. And so it's just important to understand that. And if that's something that you want to try, that's fine. But it's not establishing a good routine. It's not really building any habits. But if you need a place to start, I could recommend a few things that I think would be better. But like, give it a shot, see what you think. But don't be surprised that if in 15 days you're like, oh yeah, I was doing something. I don't remember what it was though.
Yeah, and kickstarts are good. Like I do think there's a pro in that, but kickstarting often comes with motivation, right? Like you have this motivation that's inspiring you to get started. And that'll feed you for a week. It might feed you for 2 weeks. It might feed you for 30 days. But again, then what? Like motivation doesn't last forever. You have to build the sustainable habits to make this work. We've said it once, we've said it a million times. People know how to lose weight. People are good at giving 30 days to something. And that's the benefit in this. I think you're absolutely right, Matt. Like, it's good to be able to see the horizon and say, I'm going to stick to this for 30 days. I'm going to use this motivation I have to do that. But people are bad at keeping weight off. People are bad at sticking to health and fitness over the long term. So if you're going to do something like this, I think before you commit to it and while you're motivated, you should also give some time to figuring out what is this going to lead to? What comes after it? So I can
Hmm.
sustain this for a long period of time.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we nailed that.
Yeah, that was
So
fantastic.
let's
Well done.
let's transition to the question and answer portion. So, Dylan, this question comes from a client of mine, and just for a little context, this is just somebody that strength trains regularly, is getting more interested in their nutrition, and so the question is, should I be tracking my macros?
Oh, such a good question. Big question. Like, there's a million different ways that we could approach this. I think my question back to this person would be, what is your goal?
Yeah.
Right? That'll inform my answer a little bit better. If my goal is to maximize muscle building, or ensure that I achieve a certain weight loss goal in a certain period of time, the way to do that is through tracking your macros, right? Now, if I'm just trying to be healthier and have a better, more sustainable relationship with the food that I'm eating, um, then my answer would differ some. And if I'm a person who has a really poor relationship with food, I'm staying away from this altogether with that person.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of context that'll inform sort of how you answer this. I think for most people, tracking macros um, for a short period of time can be a good idea just for the education of it, to better understand, calories, fat, carbs, protein, etc. But it's difficult. Like, it's time consuming. It's not fun to do. Um, so I don't love doing it. It depends on the type of person, probably whether or not they choose to stick with that. But I think for a week, really good idea to do just to better understand it all. Over the longer term, I think we've mentioned this before. Track your protein and maybe track your fiber to some degree. Those two variables are really critically important. Whether you're trying to build muscle, lose weight, achieve some body recomposition, tracking protein is going to help you do that. You need it to build muscle. It's satiating. It'll help you eat less if you're trying to lose weight. And fiber, just for general health. I mean, it's filling if you're trying to lose weight. It's very good for your gut. Um, we know how healthy it is for prevention of different diseases like colon cancer, etc. So that's where I think most people should probably live. Um, but yeah, it's a very contextually dependent answer. Depends on the person. So I don't know, Matt. Maybe you can answer better knowing the individual, or maybe you have some different thoughts.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth. The only point that I'll reiterate is, I think it is really useful, unless you are somebody that has a terrible relationship with their food. If
Hmm.
you are struggling with an eating disorder or anything like that, then you know you you should be working with a professional, and they can help you, um, you know, come up with some tools and strategies for making sure that you're getting what you need out of your diet. But if you are somebody that is just trying to get a little bit more context, I think that tracking for, like you said, tracking for a week is going to be so beneficial, because then at least you have a baseline. Then you at least know on an average day how much protein you're getting, what type of balance between proteins, carbs, and fats you're getting, where the majority of your calories are coming from. And then from there, that can help you, whether you are trying to build muscle, burn fat, or whatever, your goals are. But I think you said it perfectly. I think the majority of people, the goal should be to learn enough about the food that we're eating, and the macros in them, where we can start to eat a little bit more intuitively.
Mhm.
But, really the only way to truly have an intuitive diet is to have some context. So if it's something that you've never tried before and you do have a relatively healthy relationship with food, then I say give it a shot for a little while, but don't be surprised if it's annoying. Don't be surprised if you get frustrated with it. And that's okay. You're a normal person. If you, every single time that you eat food, you don't want to take out your phone and, write down exactly what it is.
No, I mean, I hate doing it.
It
I did it
sucks.
for a period of time, and now I do eat very intuitively, right? Like, I'm aiming for 150 to 180 grams of protein a day. I don't need to weigh my protein or take out my app anymore to like, I intuitively know, okay, this is about 30 grams of protein in this meal. This is about 40, and that works very well for me, but I did it for a period of time to help me understand that. If you're gonna do it, get a food scale and measure, on a food scale. It'll give you a more accurate understanding of the different macro amounts. And then I like the chronometer, Cronometer app. Really useful for making that a bit easier. But even with those tools, like it just does it. It's not super fun.
No, it's not fun. All right. Switching from something that is not fun to something that is really fun, it is time for the I Lift a sad song of the week. Before we get to that, I'm just going to do a real quick plug. Please head on over to thebasictrainer.com. And if you want a fitness program, we got them over there. If you want some merch, we got it there too. But even more so, just tell somebody about the podcast. If you like the information that you're hearing, please share it. We love what we're doing and we want to keep doing it for a long time. Now, Dylan, it is your turn for the I Lift a sad song of the week. But first off, recap. Did you listen to mine last week? Do you remember
I
that
did.
song?
I do. Banger.
Yeah, thank you.
Jam. Loved it in the gym. Um, I'm excited about this one. I think you're going to be too. I don't
Okay.
think we have any of this band on the list yet, which is criminal. Um, and the let's see if you can guess what I'm going with. The last lyric of this song is so incredibly epic. It's the last song on the album, and the last lyric, or is it the first song? I don't remember. It works well in either position. Then
I
the
think I
last
know.
lyric of the song really ties a bow on on the album itself.
Is it is it Jack's Mannequin
Yes, it is.
mixtape?
Yes, it is.
Ah, yes, sir.
This is my mixtape for her.
It's
It's
like I
like I
wrote every
wrote
note
every note
with my
with my
own
own
finger.
fingers.
Um, wow. All right, man. That's a great choice. I love that song.
Yeah, I'm excited. I actually haven't worked out to it in a while, so I'm gonna give it a go today.
Oh man, that's beautiful. All right. That was a lot of fun. People, we love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.